In October last year, I interviewed Stuart Byrne. Stuart is the chairperson of Dyslexia Gibraltar. And in our chat, we discovered lots of things about dyslexia, but what we realized was that we were just scratching the surface. So we have decided to embark on a 6-part documentary, really, talking about dyslexia. Stuart, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I thought that it would be good to try and see it from different points of view. So we're looking at parents, teachers, children, people in the workplace, just to have a bigger understanding of dyslexia.
So why don't you join us on our journey as we ask ourselves, why dyslexia?
In a world where children seem to be growing up faster than ever, it's more important than ever to make time for family. At MH Plan Travel Services, we look after all your loved ones, whether they are age 7 or 70. We will help you create those priceless lasting memories, magical experiences, and moments filled with laughter and joy. Why stress over endless details when our expert travel agents can handle it all? We've got you covered, allowing you to focus on what truly matters, your family. Plus, booking through us means peace of mind that you receive the best deals and have someone looking after your best interests throughout. So, why wait? Contact MH Plan Travel Services today, your trusted local travel agent, and let us make your family holiday a reality. Come visit us in person or go to our website at traveltheworld.gi.
So, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Why Dyslexia. As you know, we are talking about dyslexia in many different ways. We're talking to many people, trying to break down the stigma and trying to find out what it really is like to be dyslexic, to work in a dyslexic or in an environment where you're employing dyslexics. And that is why we've got together today with 3 business people. We've got Mandy Gaggero, Marketing Director of MH Plans. With us, we've also got the Honourable Leslie Bruzon, Minister. I've got it written down here, Leslie, because it's a mouthful. You're the Minister for Industrial Relations, Civil Contingencies and Sport.
And the Fire Brigade.
Oh, and the Fire Brigade. Okay, very important. And we've got a high-ranking civil servant, Angelo Cerisola, which I haven't written down what your actual title was, but you can tell us.
You can remind me.
I can remind you.
No, it's I'm Director of Services Safety Standards at Care Agency, which is the statutory body for social services in Gibraltar.
Okay, so quite an important job.
I'd like to think that it is, yes. It's a part of our health and social care provision in Gibraltar, so yeah, definitely.
And the 3 of you are dyslexic. So
Yeah,
I want to know exactly what it's like for you, what it's been like for you. I mean, you've excelled at uni because I read some of your bio, and Leslie's also been, well, you've all been to uni. So at what point, let's start with you, Mandy, because we had a chat here the other day, and I love the way you explained it. So you were one day applying for school or filling in a form or something.
I was in your class
Yes,
at Loretta Convent,
yeah.
and my sister before me had gone to school in England, and the plan was I was to follow, but I had to take a common entrance exam.
Yeah.
I took the common entrance exam. I was told I passed, but before I went to England, I needed to go and have a dyslexia test because the nun that marked the exam suspected that I was dyslexic.
Right.
And so we went along with my brother Johnny and my mother. He gave me all sorts of tests. I had this doll. The doctor had this doll, and he said, which is the right hand? And I said, I have to go like this, and, which is the left, and which is the left foot, and the right arm, and this and the other, and all sorts of things. And at the end of it, they said, yes, you're dyslexic. And he had a chat with Mum. And
what did your mum think?
No, I think they were a bit worried at that time. They didn't really know
Yeah.
what dyslexia was. It was very much a disability,
Yes,
something
absolutely.
that was not a black mark against you, but yes, it was something that was not good. And he had a chat with Mum, and from what Mum told him, he said, you're dyslexic too. It's your fault. But he did say, he said her IQ is of a level that she will very likely go to university, and he was right. I did go to university, and in a way that gave me confidence later on. That sort of little bit of knowledge that he believed that I could get there maybe helped me later on.
I've asked this question to all the guests that I've already spoken to: is having a label good for you or not, Angelo?
I find, and I think sometimes labels are good in that you can access services, it enables you to meet a certain criteria. But generally and personally, I'd like to answer this personally because it's my tradition, my experience. It hasn't been helpful. I think sometimes the labels, you box people into a category that they all have to fit. Everyone with dyslexia therefore has to be the same. And, dyslexia, we're looking at neurodiversity, it is diverse.
Yeah, and everybody's different.
And everybody's different, and it impacts people differently, and it's situation specific. You might excel in one area and not another. So I found that the label is good in that, okay, I have this that I thought, because I think it goes back into probably early years education. I think those of us who, and I think I speak with some people with dyslexia, unfortunately, terms like, I know that's the case, and I'm a little bit younger than my counterparts here, but still when I was in school, you'd think like comments like water, torpe.
But from what? From people in your class? From other friends or from teachers?
Well, from educators.
Really?
Yeah, and I know that the department has evolved. I mean, I've got great colleagues there. I work very closely with them, and I've shared these stories with them. So it is interesting because, of course, when you are labelled and then you're putting in a certain group, it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think it all started probably with my eldest brother, probably, although undiagnosed, was dyslexic, even though he went to do mathematics A-level, chemistry level, physics A-level and get 3 A's. And you'd think, but he's not torpe, he's
far from it, no?
And then he went to be a chartered accountant, etc. But he was told, but you express, are you sure you want to do GCSEs because you may struggle? And you think, this is and yes, people evolve and develop, and we think, you could be a struggling student, and then you can make it to GCSE. But generally speaking, if you're scraping a C/D grade, you don't then go on to get A's at A-level on a mathematics. That's in terms of studying intelligence. That's not how you evolve. You may be a late developer.
So Leslie,
if I can add to what Angelo was saying, I was taking notes earlier on. I have comments on my school reports from when I was 6 or 7 years old,
which you brought with you?
Which I have here. No. And there's words in there like indifferent, disappointing, weak, never achieve anything, lazy, will get nowhere, etc., etc.
Wow.
Now, when you're saying that to a 6 or 7 year old, it has a bearing.
Absolutely.
And I went to Rota Common the same as you did. I'm younger as well.
You're the oldest.
I am.
But I used to get caned frequently.
Wow.
Really?
I used to get caned frequently by Sister Anne. And it was because I was lazy and I was weak and disappointing and whatever. And I tell you something, for me it was part of growing up, getting caned by Sister Anne. I remember years later, my eldest niece was about 5, 6, 7, and you look at the little hand of a young child, you think, actually you have to take a cane. But that was it. It was it. Interesting for me anyway. Last year, in fact, it was a year in January, I was working in the primary care centre. I was one of the vaccinators, and I was administering COVID and flu vaccines. And a lady came in with her daughter. Her daughter was in school with me. So the lady comes in, she sits down, gets ready for her vaccine, and the daughter says to the mum, she says, "Oh, this is Bruzon who was in school with me." I said, "Yeah, I remember you." I said, "I always get confused because it's the twins, Davina and Samantha." And she said, "I'm Davina." I asked for her permission before mentioning her name, by the way.
Okay.
And she says to me, she said, "I remember that you used to get caned in school." And I thought, oh wow, okay. I thought, you know what? It happened years later. Didn't really have an effect on me. And you said, but it did have an effect on me. And I thought it's taken this lady now 45 years to come up to me and say, "I remember that you used to get caned in school because of all these things, stupid and lazy and indifferent, and it affected me." And it's taken all of these years for her to actually come and tell me.
Clear impact.
Which I thought, which I thought was incredible, because it wasn't only what it was doing to me, but it was affecting other people around me as well.
Yeah. So at least now, because I've had a chat with some teachers, and I hope that a lot of them are now aware about dyslexia. Things have changed and moved on a lot. This online page made by dyslexia or made of dyslexia, something that is apparently
dyslexia.
made by dyslexia, apparently has changed a lot of minds. So this is really good. So it's positive. We've come a long way from that. How are you now? I mean, you went through uni. You're now a government minister. You've worked all the way through.
I've done everything that I wanted.
Has it stopped you doing
I've done
anything?
everything that I've wanted to do.
Yeah.
My wife always says, "Más el que quiere que el que puede," sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And that is something that I went to university, I came back, worked in family business and accountancy. Then I joined the ambulance service.
Yeah.
Then I joined politics. It hasn't stopped
It
me.
hasn't stopped
but
you doing anything that you wanted to
because
do.
I am,
Hard work.
hard worker, cabezota sort of thing,
Okay.
If I want something, I'll go for it. And I've always been like that.
Angelo, you told me when we chatted that you went to university and that's where you discovered that you were dyslexic.
That's right. I mean, having said that, with that journey with teaching, there are some teachers, one of them is your colleague actually, Pat, that did say, if you get 90% after summer, I'll put you up a group. So that gave me something to work towards. And I said, I want to get 90%. And I got 92%. So I thought, thank God, otherwise I would have probably stayed stuck. So there are some positive stories. There were teachers that believed me, that believed in me rather. I was discovered because I was at university and I was, I think, my first year going to my second year. And I thought, I've worked really hard to get this far. And I thought, my early academic journey is probably, scraping the barrel. So I probably need to do something here that's a bit more to get through. And I saw this poster that said, are you, and all these, signs and symptoms. And I thought, I really identify with this. So I said,
What was this, at uni?
At university.
Right.
So I dropped them an email saying, look, I think you've got to email this and you book yourself in. And an educational psychologist then does, I think what Mandy does, they do an IQ test and they do a dyslexia test. And she said, do you want to, so I went in, it was at 8 a.m. on Saturday, I remember, really early. So you get there, you have to travel, it's by train. I go to this location, this lady's really helpful. And starts asking me like random questions. Like if I say dinosaur, you say word association. I say prehistoric. And and she starts writing. I think she's testing vocabulary probably. Then some shapes. Can you put these shapes together? And she'll time me.
Yeah.
And I think so. It does all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, seemingly interesting. And then. At the end, said, look, let's discuss the results. So a few weeks later, and says, do you want the good news and probably confirmation of what you already knew? I said, no, give me the good news first. She said, like, your IQ is above average. You are an intelligent guy. I said, oh, thank God. And then the word torpe comes back. Talk about your trauma, your early childhood, of what people in power and positions of trust will tell you. The cane, whatever. And probably your colleague, had that vicarious trauma. You'd say she was more impacted by what happened to you just by seeing it.
Yep.
So I thought, wow. So that dispelled that thought. And then she said, on the second bit, you are dyslexic. Oh. She says, things like I was asking you and you still do, you were finger counting. That's a trait normally in young children. And I still do. I still, admittedly, I still finger count. Left.
You can't tell, no, your left from your right.
I can't think about it.
You have to think about it.
You have to think about it.
And I sometimes go right.
Right.
No, sorry, left. And I'll point right.
So for me,
all my friends in my family know that you follow the hand, not what I say.
Okay.
So I will go left, but you follow where I'm pointing.
For me, automatically, I don't know right. This is left. So I've got to think left.
Okay, so you are an ambulance. You've worked in the ambulance.
Yeah.
This can be tricky when you have to administer like 30 mils of injection rather than 50.
No, that's fine. That's safe.
Well, I was telling Michelle that when I left university, when I left school, when I did my A-levels, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was either teaching or nursing. And I ended up going to teaching because I thought if I teach someone to spell a word incorrectly, it's not going to be the end of the world. They're going to die. But if I give someone 73 milliliters instead of 37 milliliters, it could have dire consequences.
Exactly. That's why I asked him.
And that actually went through my thought process.
Yeah.
And I felt safer teaching than I did going into medicine. And I was very, I liked both. I liked.
So that was my next question.
Yeah. Okay.
You've worked. It's great. You've let it. You then became a teacher.
Yeah, I did.
So with that, because you were dyslexic, because you knew you were dyslexic, and did you want to help other kids?
I I've always loved being with kids. I've always loved, helping kids, being around kids. And I thought that I could contribute something, being dyslexic and giving it a different spin, a different angle. During my teacher training, there was no mention of dyslexia or special needs. There was no training about that. I decided in my final year, not a dissertation, because I did a PGC, I did a degree, and then I took a year out. I did some teacher practice, I did some teacher training, and then I did my PGC. And at the end of the year, I did a sort of project on dyslexia because it was something that was interesting to me. And then when I left teaching after 10 years, which I loved, I think I was okay at it. They tell me I was okay. They enjoyed my classes. I was going to become a dyslexia specialist, but then I joined the family company instead.
Yes. And do you think that you were able to help some dyslexic kids? I mean,
I think so.
What was different from the way you were teaching than the other way?
Well, I wasn't in anybody else's classroom, but I always used to start the year saying, look, we need to get from A to B, from this step to this step. Some people can do it in one jump. Some people might take 10 little steps to get there. It might not be the way, it might be the way I'm explaining it that is wrong, that is not helpful to you. So if you don't understand something, please come to me and I'll find another way of explaining it. So it was never, I tried to make it, I remember my teaching practice, there was really arrogant. He was nice enough, but I remember walking down the corridor with him. He says, never admit that you don't know. And I went, well, that I'm never going to do. And I always told the kids, I said, look, I don't know, but let's find out together.
Yeah.
And so you
encouragement, no?
Go and it was before internet, before the thing, but let's go home and do some research and see what we can find, and tomorrow we'll find the answer. And so I made it in my head. I never admitted that I knew everything. And, it was okay not to know. It was okay not to get it on the first go. It was okay that you couldn't spell. But as long as you were trying, I used to get really upset when my students didn't try, when I felt they weren't trying. And that I'd lost it a couple of times. But I got very frustrated because I used to try and help them. And anyway, but they were all good. They were all good.
Angelo, you've been saying that you came back and you worked in the business community in Jim for a while, no?
The business, the public sector.
You've always worked for government?
Predominantly, yes. The third sector from the forgotten sector, the voluntary sector. So St. John Ambulance, I think probably where we
Possibly,
yeah.
Sure.
So
maybe this
question,
this question could be for both of you. So within the government, if somebody puts down that they're dyslexic on a CV, would that, I mean, honestly, what would you think? Would you, well, you're both dyslexic, so you'd probably employ them, but do you think somebody should write it in their CV or not?
The government's an equal employer. I think the government can answer the question.
It shouldn't
have
an effect. Because now on LinkedIn you can write dyslexia down as a skill.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
What's funny is that the dyslexic, that's me, at work, very often I used to manage the court team for a while, and you have to write, sentence structure. It has to be polished because your reports tend to be cross-examined by other barristers, solicitors, and the judge. So you have to be very sharp because if you've made a mistake, they'll let you know in cross-examination that you've made a mistake. Especially if you haven't expressed something very well. But what's funny is that I then became the proofreader at work, and still.
Funny.
What's interesting is I read, and probably because I'm dyslexic, I know where to look, because it's like, I think, and when you read it, you think to colleagues, I think you're dyslexic, and they go, you know what, I'm going to get myself checked, and they tend to be dyslexic because you've written it as the first draft of what I would have sent, but because I now know better, I'll read it again and I'll go, gosh, I wrote this, it doesn't make any sense. So you rewrite it again. So it's funny how you then become it's ironic almost, like I became the proofreader for...
I've always been quite good at writing, but when it comes to reading, that's where audiobooks come in very handy.
Audiobook. I love audible books. Changed my life.
Absolutely, same with me.
Really recommend.
I can write without any problem, essays or whatever, no problem at all. No. But when
would you have trouble? What is your biggest challenge? Like comprehend, like reading
aloud?
Not just reading. Just reading. I read things and then I have to read it again, and then
because a dyslexic person tends to read every single word.
Okay.
Whereas, from what I understand, because I don't know any different, everybody else sort of scans it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's very slow for dyslexia, or at least for me, it's very slow because I need to read every single word, and it takes forever. Whereas the Audible book is just, it changed my life. I would have never have listened or read,
Loads of the things that I'm
fraction of
reading
the
now,
books that I've listened to now.
So you are working for your family firm,
I am.
and you are an employer.
I am.
You employ.
Yes.
How many
Yeah.
people have you got? working?
The company itself, oh my goodness, at the Christmas party we were 160, 170.
Wow.
And that was just the people that came, that were
Okay.
able to come.
Okay, so are you a dyslexia-friendly employer?
I've never really had the conversation with other managers or directors. Obviously, my brothers know that I'm dyslexic.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know whether I've never really had the conversation with them. They just know it's, the muddle up left and right, and I forget things and don't give me instructions, or you've got to give me instructions 3 or 4 times, or remind me, what the shopping list is. And
Yeah, the reason I ask is because I had a conversation with somebody the other day who said, I think it's a bit unfair that some positions like for customs, for police, they ask for 5 GCSEs. And sometimes dyslexics find it hard to pass, maths and English, and yet could probably do a fantastic job in customs or the police or the bombero or.
It is tough. I think it is tough. I mean, in today's world, yesterday I was with the West Side and Bayside talking to the students, and we were encouraged from the 4 people on the panel. I think I was the only one that had been to university, the dyslexic, and so there are opportunities. A lot of people don't go, don't have to go to the academic route, but it is more challenging for them, I think, in today's world.
Yeah.
When I was younger, maybe it was a little bit. There were a few more opportunities. It wasn't frowned on.
Unfortunately, I mean, I've raised that issue a number of times.
Yeah.
And the problem is that, for example, you open vacancies as a government, you open vacancies, AA vacancies, which is like the lowest or the entry level.
Yes.
And the majority of people that apply are people with degrees.
Yes.
So to now say we're going to start accepting people who don't have the minimum GCSE requirements when you've got people with degrees is very unfair, I know. But I'm not
It
sure
just sounded
how.
a bit unfair from the way she was explaining it, because she really wanted to, get a job at customs and got a D for maths. And then because she got a D for maths, it's considered a fail. So she could never apply. And she always felt a little hard done by.
Absolutely.
In the end, she's opened restaurants, and we're going to be interviewing her actually in another episode. But
I really
for her, it's a
appreciate
huge thing, growing up.
Yeah.
There's a way around it though, because mathematics GCSE might be a challenge, but they used to offer numeracy at a level 2, which is equivalent to a grade C GCSE.
Okay.
So I find that, because effectively you're not testing, I would imagine, to work in customs from one's understanding of Pythagoras' theorem, really, which is what you'll get maybe in GCSE. You really want them to know how you count the tobacco coming in and out.
Exactly right.
So the adult numeracy will probably give you evidence that they can, perform the duties of an officer of that grade. If maybe they're going for an accountancy job, you might say, well, actually, I need more than a level 2 numeracy.
So I need some common sense.
So there has to be, you can work around that. And I think the adult numeracy is definitely something that I know people with dyslexia is considered a learning disability. I mean, disability is always, and there's a negative connotation attached to that. It's always hard, first to admit that you're dyslexic. Secondly,
It's a skill, according to LinkedIn, of course.
it's because obviously they cite all these celebrities and
Richard Branson.
Huge amount of actors.
Yes,
Dyslexic.
exactly.
Huge amount of actors.
Einstein.
Yeah.
Because it's as we know, you can think outside the box.
Yeah.
Your brain. I remember watching, and it was very informative for me as a dyslexic. I must have been in my 20s, and there was a program on Channel 4, and it was 2 or 3 episodes on the dyslexic brain, and it really explained, why I was different. Why I thought things a different way to everybody else. I'm not a word person. I'm a picture person. Give me a camera and I'll get behind the camera and I'll work out with pictures and stuff. And what was I saying? And yes, this program basically explained how my brain worked. It wasn't that it was better or worse. It was just different. And I think that is why, companies like LinkedIn are recognizing it as a skill, because it is, you want diversity. Everybody talks about diversity. whatever your point of view, whatever your background, well, dyslexia is another point of view, and I think it can be an asset.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there have been times.
Yeah, well, you were telling me
there
about
have been
this
times
meeting
when-
you were at where somebody asked.
Just little things, and it wasn't anything particularly important, but I just suddenly thought, why don't you put it was something to do with the cable car on the door. I said, why don't you put the door there instead of there? They thought, oh,
We hadn't thought of that.
and it was something stupid. But
Yeah.
it was just I don't know, the way you thought, the wiring.
You
What-
do see things differently.
Yeah, you do.
What could change in the education system in Gib, do you think, to make things a bit better for kids not to have to go through? I mean, it is better now, but is there anything that you think that could really change things?
I think the fact that people are being more open about it. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, the then Governor Ed Davis coming out and, as a dyslexic. I can't imagine that happening 15, 20 years ago.
That was very good. I thought that was
I
really
thought that
good.
was brilliant. See? But there's still a lot to be done. I remember, again, about 10 years ago, having a conversation with a school teacher who still referred to dyslexics as, they said, there's no such thing as un burro.
And that's 10 years ago. Tampoco
And that
es,
teacher's,
not so, eh?
Still teaching.
and that teacher is younger than me, so that teacher
Really?
is still teaching.
Yeah.
Whether their way of thinking has changed or not, I don't know. But that was the words that came out of their mouth.
Well, that Made in Dyslexia presentation with Ed, which Governor Ed Davis was part of, I thought was excellent, because the message was, and it came across loud and clear, if you teach everybody the way that's helpful to dyslexic child,
Exactly.
everybody
Will
learns. Whereas if you teach a sort of normal way, then the dyslexic child can be left out.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
I was, again, what I was telling you earlier, telephone numbers. If you split up a telephone number, instead of having an 8-digit mobile number, if you put it into 4 and 4, that for me is really helpful when I come to have to dial it into my number or, record
break
it,
up the
break
number.
it up
Yeah,
the
yeah.
numbers. And that is helpful for me as a dyslexic. But I can't imagine it bothers anybody else.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
it's those little tiny things that are great. They can make a big difference.
I think education has come a long way, and
Yes.
I know even the senior leadership team in education, some of them are good friends of mine, colleagues that I work with, definitely on board. And even when I've chatted to them about my experience, they're horrified. They're like, but as a teacher, that is the opposite. You want to promote, encourage, get students out there. Think, it's not for us to decide what they should be as adults or not. It's for them. Empower them. So it's not, that's not how
all
it should
bad.
be. It's not how it should be. So they recognize that within the profession, there might be people that maybe don't have that vocation, but it shouldn't really be telling a student your daughter been limited.
Because that's going to affect you. Well, it could. It hasn't stopped any
Or
of
propel
you.
you, yeah.
Or propel you. I mean, yes, exactly. It hasn't stopped any of you reaching your goals.
Dyslexics are stubborn.
My nephew says it's not stubbornness, it's determination.
There you go.
There you
That's a positive.
good word.
Exactly.
Something else, I don't know whether it's related or not, but something else that I am is I'm very impulsive my family are pobre. My wife, I remember one particular morning, my son had just been born, and I woke up one morning, I said to my wife, Julian, she says, what? I said, we're selling the house. And she said, where are we going? I don't know, but we're selling the house. We sold
sold the house?
And
we
why?
moved
What,
to-
just like that?
It just me metió la cabeza that we were moving.
go.
We were moving. And we did.
And you think that's because you're dyslexic?
I don't know. But I remember an interview in GBC with Greg Butcher, and he was saying that anyone has the ability of doing well, but to do really, really, really well, you got to have. I think what he used was delusional. So you got to see
take
things.
risks.
You got to see things in a different way, and be thick-headed enough to say, "I'm going for that."
Well, a lot of the original computer geeks were dyslexic. And I remember at school in England having the first BBC with a floppy disk and everything else. And I was the only one in the computer room. I got it. And it was literally DOS, the 0 plus, 0 1 1 0 0. And I helped Mrs. R, our maths teacher, to do this little program. And if I'd gone into that world, God, I would have been,
Millionaire.
never know.
Yeah.
Next Bill Gates.
But I got that. I was always quite
picked
good
it
at
up
computer.
quickly.
I picked it up quickly because my brain was able to sort of picture the way the computer worked, the way the folders, the sort of drawers, and anyway.
Do you think that the business community in Gib is aware that there are great strengths to being dyslexic? Or not, in general?
I think when you, I mean, it's my theory, and it might be well researched. Maybe I haven't really got into that, but I think the reason why perhaps dyslexic people think out of the box is because as very young children they have to survive in a school environment, so they need to kind of find a way of being in a classroom where they're not seen as weak to survive. So if you're doing a spelling test and you're probably not doing very well, you tend to be the class clown. You tend to be the one, distracting, making noise and stuff. So I think you kind of develop these mechanisms that are out of box mechanisms.
It's a bit like being the youngest child of 4 or 5 kids, and you've got to be the one that stands out. And
like you.
And you're all about to, and your vocabulary is actually better. Because if you can't spell a word, you need to find another word to use it.
Exactly.
So you actually have a better vocabulary because you want to use when you can speak all of them, but you sometimes can't write all of them. And before computers, you had to use another word. So you found one that you could spell.
But that's a really good example.
Yeah.
I struggled once in writing. It was antiquated. I thought, I'm sure it has a Q. I thought, but I can't remember this. Prehistoric. That's the word. So I came up with, it's true. But I never
Both
thought
good
about
words.
it.
But as far as employees are concerned, whether or not they're aware, I don't know. But it's
I don't think so.
I don't think they're necessarily aware, but the individual will do it themselves, because if there is something that they excel at, that is what the employer is looking for, depending on what job you're going for, obviously.
But would they put it down to dyslexia?
No, they won't.
No.
But if you happen to be good at maths and the job entails mathematics, then you're just going to be good at your job, and that's it. Basically.
I think maybe people are aware because maybe they've got a family member and they know about it from a nephew or a niece or a child or whatever.
Well, I think
but I'm not sure if it's
was 1 in 5. Was
1
it?
in 5.
1 in
Exactly,
5. So
1 in 5. So
it's
I would say that the awareness is there, but it's very. What's what I'm looking for?
Limited. I guess your families are, and people within your life are more aware of it, because obviously you
I've
are.
got no problem admitting. On a daily basis, I admit that I'm dyslexic.
Do you think people don't admit it? Do you think some people try and hide it?
So.
Oh, this is interesting because Mandy taught my wife.
Yes.
And she said you were a brilliant teacher.
Thank you.
And she never thought, you were a teacher that didn't get it. So she always.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You never came across, and an educated dyslexia is probably quite rare.
But I had my tricks because I never
developed these mechanisms.
I never learnt my times table, and I was terrified that they would know that I wouldn't know the times table, even though I was demanding the times table from them, because one of the things you have to teach. So I had this box, which Alex will remember. I had this box, and when I did the 9 times table, I'd get the box and I'd pull out the 9 times table, and I'd put it, and then I'd have it in the order that I'd asked it. And when it came to the answers, I'd try and think of it in my brain and then flip it over. Oh, I'm right. Great. You know what I mean? I was doing the test with them. And half the time I'd get it wrong. But my box saved my life when it came to teaching them the times table. And I was just trying to make games. We used to do, number star and all that.
Made it fun and a bit different.
Tried to.
Do you think your experience with dyslexia has influenced your leadership style?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think so.
Really?
Definitely for me, yeah.
I think we were pathetic, no?
I was about to say that. I was
Yeah.
about to say exactly that. I think that empathy. No. It is.
I'm asking the questions.
I
You can
think that
all. You can
empathy
all.
is a word that comes up a lot when around dyslexics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you think of leadership,
Yeah.
kind leadership as being compassionate, being empathic, your ability to relate, which is what leadership should be.
Yeah.
Dyslexics tend to, because of their own journey
Yeah.
and their own discrimination around that. So I think it probably born from I would say altruistic, but it's a little bit self-serving, because you've been there and you go, I know what it feels like. That's the only reason why I decided to do this fellowship for leadership, because I thought, why not?
I've never seen dyslexia. I've never felt dyslexia as a disability. It's often a challenge, and in lots of little things. But it's and knowing I'm dyslexic has. The excuse is not a word I'd want to use, but at least it explains why I do things differently. So disability, no. Challenge, yes. Different, just a different perspective. Diversity. Everybody's talking diversity.
The neurodiversity of dyslexia.
Dyslexia was one of those ways to include diversity.
I agree.
Extra diversity.
I love the fact that
Leslie?
we're able to think different and see things differently and find different solve problems in a different way. I think it's brilliant.
Do you find it hard explaining yourself though sometimes? Getting people
Sometimes,
to
yeah.
see it the way you do?
Quite often, yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens? You have to keep going.
Well, you just learn to be patient and to it again.
That's
and
not
explain
Pictionary,
it.
Are there other dyslexics in your work environment?
I don't know.
Are there?
Yeah.
And how does that work?
So this is really useful because you spoke about people's roles here. So
Yeah.
someone's in office,
Yeah.
the business sector, well established, known to be successful, in the public sector. So there was a part of me that I didn't want to do this, and I discussed it only because I commented on your Facebook. So I have all these messages like, "But you're doing a PhD. How come you're dyslexic?" I'm thinking, so I felt like, oh gosh, being impulsive. I just commented and said, "Well, Michelle, I think."
There you go. You see?
Everybody went
And then I
forward,
got all
but
these
that's-
messages.
Yes.
And then people were tagging you, tagging me, and I'm thinking, how is this like this thread of 17 comments now? And I said, do you feel? And I said, I think we have talked about leadership and we have a moral obligation, if you're dyslexic and you've been successful, to tell other people,
Yes.
probably children listening to us
100%.
now,
100%.
but the minister is dyslexic, but this business leader who speaks so well and is so eloquent is dyslexic.
Yeah.
And this guy, he seems to, he's reading finishing his PhD, he's dyslexic. So
Yeah.
that's
They
why,
can do
that's
it.
why.
I think we had this conversation over the phone where I said I feel embarrassed, not embarrassed of being here, embarrassed of not having been here before.
Wow.
Because when the whole Dyslexia Association or whatever society started, it was Klaus Olsen and his wife Jackie. And I remember Klaus asking me loads of times, "Why don't you come here and give us a hand?" And the most I did to help him out was stand on a Friday, Flag Day, rattling a tin down Main Street. And I think,
You should have done more.
I could have done a lot more. And now that I'm in the job that I'm in, it would be horrendous if I didn't.
Yeah. And can you?
When I'm here, so hopefully,
You are.
hopefully,
But you'll be able to hopefully people will watch this and change. Their minds will change. And
He's got a voice.
We can do
He's our voice.
absolutely.
do something.
you should.
But apart from that, it's the fact that again, if you want to do something, you can do it. Just get on with it because it'll happen.
Well, that's one of the reasons why. Well, Stuart was the one who approached me on this. We did a little interview, and I think we just scratched the surface. We could have talked for hours. He said we've got to do some more and talk to some more people about this, so more people understand what it is and how great it is. Really,
And I think it goes back to what you say is young people listening hopefully will encourage them and see it not as a disability, but as a challenge
exactly.
and as a.
it's breaking the stigma, like you said. This person who's younger than you, who's still teaching with that mentality, that has to change.
Absolutely.
We're talking about one of your questions that you wanted to put forward, Angelo. We're talking about guidance. What guidance do you offer others facing similar challenges? All of you in your roles.
Good call. The ability to be vulnerable, because this is what in effect I'm doing here. I'm being my true self. I am allowing myself in these moments of awareness and recognition to say, yes, I've struggled. There are challenges, but that hasn't stopped me from achieving my goals, whatever they were. So that's what I'm offering. I'm offering people my story and helping them along the way. It's a little bit sometimes, I must say, disconcerting when I am either teaching at a university, for example, and I've had a comment made by someone. It's like, oh, but so and so is dyslexic. That's what you may have noticed. And I'm thinking, you don't know so much. And I go, but I'm dyslexic. And they're like, but you speak well, you write well. You think I'm thinking, what is that a compliment? Is that an insult? Because people generally, there's still stigma attached to dyslexia with the old words that we've used, like Dr. Water, these things. And yes, it's a lot better. But when you're a child, when you're impressionable, and those words are told to you,
it hurts. And it stays with you, no? From the sounds of it.
Absolutely, sticks and stones can break your bones, but what else? That's a little rubbish.
Yeah.
It is helpful.
When
But
you're
it-
How do you feel now,
but
Leslie, after all these years?
Funny, it's funny because I was with my dad the other day. My dad is very switched on. He still does all his banking online, and all his transfers, everything. He applies for everything. The e-gov. He does everything.
He's dyslexic.
Well, and he says to me, he says, "You know what? I realized today when I was reading something." I said, "What, Dad?" And he says, "I'm dyslexic." I said, "Dad, you're 82 now. We're not going to do anything about it now." Sort of thing.
My mother the same. My mother does. She's incredible. Her friends are all, how do you know, you with a computer? And she says, because my daughter taught me. But she's phenomenal, and she's 85, and she does all her internet banking
my
and
dad the same.
WhatsApps. And
Does she really?
everything. She, I go on a trip, and she says, "Oh, by the way, there's a really good restaurant." She does all the research, and she'd tell
On
me
the
what to do
restaurant?
on the restaurant because I'm going, and I'll stay the night, and she's seen another hotel, and she's
See, my
incredible.
dad, whenever it's my kids' birthdays or whatever, he transfers money to their accounts. He does everything online, everything. He loves
Wow,
it.
that's great.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap things up because we've been talking for quite a while. But something quite interesting I think we could end on. I want to know, what is the best advice that you've ever been given? And what is the best advice you could give others watching, others who are dyslexic, others who may have just discovered that they're, dyslexic?
Don't give up.
Yeah.
You are special. You're you, and no one else can be you. And be the best be the best you can be.
Absolutely, and don't pay attention. And don't listen to other people's opinions.
I was going to say, don't listen to your teacher, but that's not very good. Yes.
Everyone has an opinion.
Yeah.
But Mandy just hit the nail on the head. Just be the best person that you can be.
Yeah, and you can reach your goals, no? From
And
what
don't
you've all been saying.
Yeah, and
You've
don't let
all got there.
And don't let anything that anyone says.
Don't let negativity
Absolutely.
get you
There's
down.
loads of that. There's a lot of that always around, and it's draining. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Look, I echo, absolutely. Learn from the good and the bad. There's always a lesson somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might be a lesson that you don't enjoy, but take the lesson and then, be your truest self, I think Joseph Campbell is the one that says it's a privilege of a lifetime to be who you are, which is my WhatsApp. If you look at that stayed, and that really stayed with me because I think a lot of people navigate this life not really being true to who they are and their passion. And I think that is my goal. I'm not in competition with anyone. I'm not competing to get there first. I'm in competition with myself. So this is what I did. You can take it. This is my story. But if it doesn't work for you, that's also fine.
That's very good. Don't compare yourself to other people, because as I used to tell my kids, one person can jump the mountain in one leap. You might take 100 steps, but you're both going to get there.
But unfortunately, the society we live in now is especially
it's a challenge.
with social media. It's all about what other people are doing, where they're going on holiday, their new car, their new this, their new that, a new restaurant they're going to. So that is even more challenging now of not comparing yourself to other people.
And it's really sad, Leslie, because a million likes won't be enough if you don't like yourself.
yeah.
So
Absolutely, but nowadays we're bombarded by 30-second clips about how great life is for everyone else.
yeah.
Absolutely.
That's how we've been conditioned, and that's how our kids are thinking. Unfortunately,
What's
Stay
the
away
best?
from social media.
What's the best advice you've ever been given, Mandy?
Treat others as you'd like others to treat you. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And be
definitely.
kind.
My grandfather to my mother to me.
I think the being kind is part of.
Yes. Well, I think we've covered quite a lot of things. I've got to say thank you to the three of you for being so open and putting your vulnerability out there, because you have, really.
Wow.
And I'm really glad that you all decided to come along.
Pleasure.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll have another episode coming up very shortly.
Thank you, Michelle.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for doing.
One in 5 people are dyslexic. Do you think you might be dyslexic? Please get in touch with us at Dyslexia Gibraltar and scan the QR code to follow us on all our social media platforms. Please watch, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel Dyslexia Gibraltar.